In 2021, social media platforms were responsible for the loss of $770 million. Talk about a wealth exchange. Wow. When it comes to buying gold and silver, I've made it very clear that I'm not a big fan of buying peer-to-peer online. Don't get me wrong, we all love the idea of buying gold and silver at a discount or using online to help you find that special coin. But the rolling of those risk-reward dice or the analysis just doesn't work for me. That said, and regardless of my opinion or how much I rail against it, I know many of you are currently doing it and more will join in because, as I've said before, savvy investors don't avoid risk, instead they manage risk, which is what we're going to cover in this video. I have to admit, sometimes your good doc can act like a boomer and resist things like e-commerce. Over the last 5 years, retail e-commerce has more than doubled from 425 billion to 875 billion. Unfortunately, this has also led to a dramatic increase in fraud, and social media sites is where scammers go to con us. The FTC data shows that 1 in 4 fraud reports start on social media with an ad, a post, or a message. For scammers online, especially social media sites, they create a great opportunity to utilize a low-cost, low-risk way to exploit us. And even the most sophisticated and savvy gold and silver buyers and investors can get caught up. I'm sure some of you have heard about the recent Reddit scammer that got away with $50,000 to $100,000. And that's no shade, and I mean zero shade to that group over at Reddit, because that scam could have easily happened on Instagram. And in their defense, that particular forum is probably the best I've seen in terms of how they run it and offer security measures. I've almost made purchases using that forum in the past, so definitely no shade to them. But here's the cold reality and facts. Nearly 9 out of 10 victims name Facebook or Instagram as the social media platform where those crimes occurred. Now, with all the scary stats out of the way, the reality is that many within our community conduct thousands of these transactions daily without any harm happening and no one being hustled or scammed. In other words, there's just a bunch of good men and women out there doing square business, but we have to make sure we find them and ensure that there are protections in place to protect you and your hard-earned money, which is what we need to really explore. I think it's important that we draw some lines of distinction when it comes to online transactions, because while a transaction may have started online, that doesn't mean that the final execution wasn't in person. Is how I break down the world of buying precious metals online. You may disagree, and that's fine, but from my vantage point, and for the sake of this video, it starts with the good old World Wide Web, and from there you have 3 main paths: e-commerce sites like eBay, Etsy, etc. Then you have online marketplaces like your Facebook, your Instagram, Reddit, kind of social media based kind of sites. And then lastly, you have your online dealers like, yep, you got it, Pimbex and others. Right off the bat, let's just ignore the online dealers, as they are overwhelmingly safe, as they are typically solid businesses where you have a variety of recourses should anything go wrong, which is why I have them in the green. Moving to the far left, we have the e-commerce sites, which I placed in blue because there's somewhat elevated levels of risk, but many of these risks can be managed by vetting the seller and the platform, as the more legit ones will have some kind of protection for you as a buyer. I know some of these platforms like eBay don't seem as concerned about fake items being listed, but what they tend to do is to lean very hard towards protecting buyers and offering guarantees. You even see those protections being offered by sites like PayPal, who I believe offers some of the best protections. My general rule is, when in doubt, pay with PayPal. And yes, you should purchase the extra insurance. You want that peace of mind and you want that comfort. So back to the platforms. Just like any online transaction, the devil is in the details. And this is where many people screw up buying online, because they buy items that are described as 24 karat plated, and or they don't vet it, and they don't vet the seller by checking reviews, the number of sales, or even sending an email to the seller to see how long it takes them to respond. How did they respond? Use that as an opportunity to get a sense of their professionalism. Sorry to say this, but I'm not buying 1/1000th of an ounce of anything from a seller in China or even outside the US, period. Well, hello there, and I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm Dr. Stacker's delicate and fragile self-esteem. He would never share this, but he really likes when you give his videos a like. It makes him and me feel good inside. So if you have gained something from this video, some kind of value, or you just appreciate the fact that we're being a little vulnerable with you right now, sharing our inner voice with you, would you please hit the like button? Thank you. Don't forget to respond in the comment section to these questions. What are your thoughts about buying through social media sites? Have you ever purchased metals through social media sites? Why or why not? If you have purchased through these sites, how was your experience? What are some of the protections you use? Any suggestions for the other community members? And before we jump right back in, shout out to my boy Constitutional Stacker. I want to let you know that I got your beautiful sticker, brother. I appreciate it very much. Constitutional Stacker is over there grinding as well. Go check him out. Doing great work. In a nutshell, eBay and some of those other sites, they really have evolved and not the cesspools they once were. In fact, while you're surfing eBay in particular, don't be surprised to find a number of online dealers that actually have eBay stores, such as bullion exchanges, AppMex, and in fact, one of my LCSs actually sells on eBay as well. The topic of eBay and platforms like that have been covered thoroughly on YouTube, and so I don't feel like I need to go there, and that's just not the focus of this video, but you check those out if you need to. The same is true for what I have in the yellow box. What you can see here is I've labeled these as medium risk transactions. Of all the ways to buy from a second party, this is by far my preferred approach because it's the only transaction where the seller gets their money right away. You can test it before, you can even test it before you buy. You get the item right away. There are risks, but my video, Don't Get Hustled, Robbed, or Scammed, aka Avoid the Dangers of Buying Gold and Silver in Person, that video goes into incredible detail how to do those things in such a way that you manage the risk and significantly reduce the chances of anything going wrong. So check that video out. I'll put a link at the end. Last year, I purchased over 3 ounces of gold and more than 150 ounces of silver using this approach. And I feel like the steps outlined make it incredibly easy and safe and secure. It's one of my earlier videos, so it only got 800 views, but it's got really great content, I promise y'all. With everything else out of the way, I want to focus on the red box in the middle. First things first, I know a number of you are already offended because you have completed dozens of transactions this way, and you no longer see this as a risky way to purchase metals. If you're in that camp, could you do me a favor? Could you comment some of the best safety practices, tips, and steps that you've taken to reduce that risk? From where I sit, the biggest reason these transactions are high risk is because it requires a lot of faith in other people that I don't know. Don't get me wrong, my faith is strong, but I don't always like putting it to the test either. I don't like any situation where I have to send someone money who may or may not be real or a faithful actor, only to wait and hope that they will follow through on their end of the deal. I've lived a long life. I've lived long enough. I've been hustled, been taken, and taken my L's. At the same time, let's come back to the concept of risk and reward and the other part of the edict, which is that if I'm going to take on risk, I want to be compensated for taking on that risk. And these transactions just don't meet my standard or my reward for taking on that risk. What you save just isn't worth it. For example, the handful of times that I've purchased from a second-hand party or done a peer-to-peer transaction, I've never paid above spot. And ironically, I would never consider buying anything priced below spot. My logic is quite simple. Why would anyone accept below spot when they could walk into an LCS and in 15 minutes get paid cash and receive spot price? Why would a seller go through all the efforts to list online, take the phone calls, deal with the flakes to sell online for less? It doesn't make sense. I know I wouldn't do that. In my mind, this only makes sense if you're trying to get more than a spot price. So that way you can automatically eliminate any of those too good to be true deals because they're probably not true. At the same time, as the buyer, why would I pay much more than spot when I could go online for a similar price, not waste my time setting up a meeting, taking safety precautions, testing the metal, etc., just to save 25 bucks? No way. My time and my safety are worth far more than that. So as a result, I'm sure I've looked at tens of thousands of ads and I've made less than 10 transactions over the years, simply because I have clarity as it relates to the type of buyer, the situation, and the price I'm looking for. That's part of how I manage the risk. Do I miss a number of good deals? Absolutely. But here's what goes through my mind and what I want you to seriously consider. If just one deal goes wrong, just one deal, how much are you putting at risk and how long would it take you to make those lost funds back? Going back to the scam I mentioned at the beginning, the seller on that forum had conducted Square Business at least a dozen times before they pulled off that scam. And this is why CON is short for confidence, because really good scams have to build up your confidence in them and the scam itself. And what that means to me is I just can't trust it, right? Someone can be doing this for a very long time and anything can happen. And when it comes to my hard-earned money, that anything doesn't feel good, especially when we're talking about hundreds and thousands of dollars. I keep coming back to, is it worth it? With my PSA out of the way, for those of you who will choose this path, let's get into the specifics of how you can manage the risk better. And here's my list of 10 plus a bonus. Use platforms with built-in payment options. That gives you a lot more recourse of things to do and things you can trace if there's some kind of issue. Use payment methods that offer buyer protections, obvious. If the price is unbelievable, so is the item. Use your spidey senses. Buy from well-known and well-established members within the community. Buy using a referral system. Get someone who's done business with someone to recommend, and then you can feel a little more comfortable. Check references and reviews. Video the unpacking and testing of the metals, time-stamped and as a continuous video. This is a major one. You want to make sure that you have proof that it is exactly what they gave you, and so the video proof is going to be important. Test the metals immediately. You got the ping tester, you check your weight, your dimensions, sigma testing, acid testing. I don't know who really wants to do acid testing the metals, but those are all kind of things that you can do. Number 9, I want to warn you and watch out for the partial delivery upfront scam. So this is one where the person sends you half of it, and then you test it, you feel certain that everything is legit. You send them the full payment, and then they're supposed to send you the other half. And guess what? You don't get the other half. And for those in-person people, watch out for the Sunday emergency transaction, where the person has to sell on Sunday when there aren't any LCSs open. Your counter to that is, great, we'll meet at a pawn shop, because almost every pawn shop has a jewelry tester. 10, look for inconsistencies or that weird feeling inside. You see those red flags? It is better to bail on the deal. I also have to share with you that I was a little disappointed that no one mentioned how I ended the last video, where I pretended that something went wrong with the video, and then I snuck in there. You were my A+ students from Making It All the Way, and I told you to always stack smarter and never stop learning. Got you again.